In 1998, the Holy Spirit taught me, showed me, by means of real-time intelligence gathered from real people who had been involved, the plans of the New World Order, Illuminati, elite bankers, Satanists, Luciferians, whoever you might understand that they are, but Luciferians and Satanists is the most correct answer, is that these people plan to remove cash from everywhere. Now, before the advent of the European Economic Union in 1998, I met a young girl who had just returned from being an intern in Belgium and Brussels. Now, the crux of the story is, I'm going to give you the short of it so you can finish watching in a few seconds, and then I'm going to tell you exactly the events that transpired so that you'll understand how fully proved out this whole thing is. And I'm going to give you details that you can confirm if you really wanted to do the research. Okay, now, the short of it is that these men, she said that there were 13 of them who met in a room, and they all wore black suits and bow ties when they met. But she absolutely refused to give me their names. She stopped short of that. I had many meetings with her, and she never would give this information. Okay, now, so that's the short of it. And this is what they said. She told me that their plans are that, she said, first they would put this chip information on ID cards of university and college students because those people would be the decision makers at the time that they wanted to implement their cash-free system. And she said that after that, she said then they intended to put it into people of animals, dogs and things like this, people that others that weren't cared about, violent criminals, people on death row, sex offenders, and then she said that they intended to get it into children because people would be afraid of losing their children, that their children could be abducted or stolen, so they would be willing to put chips in their children, and that eventually they would and they also were going to put it into military people. That was one phase, and then before forcing the implementation of a chip system into all people and completely cash-free. Now, 3 months after that, I was a student at the University of Pennsylvania at the time. 3 months after that, they called me in. They gave me a new ID card, sure enough, with a chip on it. In 2002, when I volunteered for the Army National Guard in Georgia, they gave me an ID card with that chip on it. So they're putting these chips on the ID cards. You probably have some kind of an ID with one of those chips on there. You can scan it, it has all your information on there, blood type, everything. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the story. In 98 sometime, it was cold, it was late fall. Actually, I think it was probably more closer to October, November maybe. I was riding down Chestnut Street on Penn campus. There was a table there. I saw something going on. And I just felt the Holy Spirit say, you need to go check that out. So I went back and I saw that they were preaching Lyndon LaRouche. So I just laughed and I kept moving. A woman at the table stopped me. She said, hey, why did you laugh and keep moving right there? I said, oh, Lyndon LaRouche. She said, what about Lyndon LaRouche? I said, oh, he's a nut job. She said, tell me, why is that he is a nut job? I said, well, you know what? I guess I just don't really know exactly, but I just know that he's a nut job. And she said, people that don't want you to hear what he has to say have character assassinated him in the press and the media, and you have fallen for it. So I said, well, okay, and I really felt by the Holy Spirit that I ought to just go. So I said, okay, I'll attend. She said, oh, sign on my list. I said, no, I'll just show up. So I showed up at the right time, and as I walked in, I felt, again, by the Holy Spirit that I didn't want my name to be on this list of people that attended. So I made up a name, and I wrote down JP Smith. I just made up that name at random. I went and sat down. It was a video. It wasn't Lyndon LaRouche like I thought it was going to be. It was a video. We watched the video. It was very interesting. It made sense to me. I was able to understand it. And basically said that the world is made of what he called the fluff economy, and that there are all these bets on guesses and hedges, and that basically most of the cash, most of the wealth in the world is based on not a real solid thing like a cup or a manufacturing piece of equipment, nothing real that could be sold to pay off investors or stockholders, but it's all bets and guesses. It's all speculation, right? When they talk about trades or earnings or whatever, you know, it's a 30 to 1, like there's really $30 invested for every $1 that really exists. And he said that it's worse than that. And during the meeting, a very amazing thing happened. I had a similar thing happen one other time. But this is what happened, is suddenly, as I was watching, and I understood that no one else was visually perceiving this, the lights all dimmed down, and I saw a bright white light come up on 3 different people. And I understood in the same moment that when everything ended, everyone else was going to walk out, but me and those other 3 people were going to meet in the middle of the room, in the center aisle, and have a conversation. And that's exactly what happened. At the end of the video, the MC says, "Are there any questions?" No one has any. She said, "Well, that's never happened before. You're free to go." Everybody stood up and filed out. No chit-chat, no one commenting to anyone else, no one looking for some lost gloves, nothing like this at all. And instead, those people and myself go to the middle of the room, and the first man is a very tall man dressed in a nice corduroy jacket, the one typically worn by a cool professor in the Northeast. And he was a very big guy. I think he had a beard. And he says to me, he says, "I am an economics professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and I want you to know that everything he just said is absolutely correct." And then he just walked away. He didn't introduce himself or anything. He just gave that statement and left. And the next man was a very old man. He was small, very neatly dressed, and he had an accent, and he said, "I'm an Italian man." He gave his name. I forgot it. I'm sorry. And he said, "And I want you to know that everything that I see now in the world now is just like it was in Italy before Mussolini started a war with Ethiopia." He said Mussolini had armor and everything else, and he could have sent it in there, but he didn't because he wanted the young men standing in the unemployment lines to die. This was the old man's idea. Personally, I think that they want those people to die as a way of serving Satan, to create death and pain and suffering, right? So that's what but that's what the old Italian man said to me. And it's very interesting later as I watched the Iraq War unfold, and they weren't given armor that was available. Why? Death, suffering, pain, sacrifice to Satan. Okay, now again, back to the story. The last person is this cute little girl with dark hair, long hair, named JP DiVito. Now that's the girl's real name. I'm giving it to you. Now she told me that she was the daughter of a judge, and that she had been on an internship, and she had worked for these guys in Belgium, and she told me the whole thing. Now I was friends with her for a while, and I can tell you details about this girl. This girl is a very good singer, and she likes to spontaneously stand up and start singing in a restaurant, which she did while I was with her one time. So, and she was very angry because her father had recently remarried, and she thought that he ought not to remarry, that he should just have one wife, and she and I disagreed on that, and that's why our friendship ended, because I told her that she ought to respect her father and respect his decision and treat the new wife with courtesy. She disagreed. She said I had to retract my statement or she would no longer be my friend, and that was the end of that. Okay, so this is the point, people, is that this situation is in play. Now, people are absolutely moving you to a cash-free society right now, and they are acclimating you to the idea of a cashless system, and you don't want to go along to it with it because it's going to be absolute control. Now, here's actually, I'm going to throw in a bonus at the end of here. Years later, I was in Ukraine. The Holy Spirit told me, he said, "You see that missionary over there?" I said, "Yeah, I see that guy." He was a guy named Koen Carlier from Belgium. And he said, "Go tell him everything I told you." So I went, I told him the whole story like I just told you. And he says, "Oh yeah," he said, "we know about that." I said, "Who we?" He said, "Everybody in Belgium." I said, "How do you know about this?" He said, "Oh," he said, "there's an entire building built." He said, "Inside are enough computers to track 6 billion people with chips." And he said, "And do you know what we call it?" I said, "No, what do you call it?" He said, "We call that building the Beast." He said, "It's as large as 2 football fields." But basically, that building is called the Beast, and it will track the chip that's going to be in you, which I think we fairly could call the mark of the beast. So, this is the man from Modesto. Remind you, as always, to pray or be defeated, and walk in obedience, because this is where you will receive blessing. God blesses those who are in obedience. So I want you to be blessed.